Hey, this is Dennis, and welcome to another episode of the Ground to Reason podcast. Today, Joel and I are going to put together a comprehensive discussion on cutting the cord in 2017. So, if you got some family members or some friends and they're looking to save some money, this would be a good episode to throw their way.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, one of the things we hear a lot about from, well, the handful of people that like to write back in and so on is, you know, how much they are enjoying things now that they've stepped away from the major pay TV industry.
Right. And it's a really kind of a hot topic now because like I've seen it more and more in the news. Even the people who were denying it was happening like a couple of years back have kind of changed their tune.
Yeah, what was that guy's name who put out that report?
Oh,
recently?
Moffat?
Yeah.
Yeah, there used to be a group of like cable TV industry folks that would just deny any cord cutting report there was. And even those guys are like, yeah, it's getting bad.
Well, I think once, what was it, a year and a half ago, the industry dipped under 100 million.
Right.
That was like some sort of psychological.
Well, it was.
barrier.
It was a big, and it's in free fall right now.
Yeah.
Because like we talked about on the show, they were like north of 700,000 subscribers in the first quarter of this year. They lost.
Yeah,
that's huge.
That's a lot of people.
It's an 1/8% in a quarter.
Just so you know. That's the entire population of Baltimore.
It is, in a quarter.
Every man, woman, and child in Baltimore just stopped watching paid television.
Yeah, so, I mean, if that pace kept up, you're talking about almost 3 million people, or 3 million households dropping cable.
Again, households, what did we figure it out the other day based on the census? 3.2?
Oh, well, I mean, there's roughly, yes.
3.2
there's 100
people.
There's about 115, 118 households.
So it's actually closer to like 3.1.
Right.
People per household.
Right.
So that's a lot of people.
It is. It's happening. And so what we wanted to do is, because we did this, like the first episode was a cord cutting episode, but a lot has actually changed in cord cutting in the past year.
And
so we figured
tech has shifted a lot.
It has. So we figured it would be a good time to kind of just put together one comprehensive episode that you guys could just hand out to people who are looking for information on how to do this.
Or refer to yourselves, right? Like, because maybe there's some new tips and tricks or tools that you might find interesting.
Yep. So, but before we dig in, I wanted to read an email, and this actually, it'll kind of give you guys out there, it'll give a perspective on someone else who's cut the cord, besides, me. And it's just kind of good to hear that from someone else, like I don't like using quote unquote real person, but somebody who's not part of the show. Write in and give their experience on cord cutting. And I was also kind of just really touched by what the guy
and I gotta say, this is my favorite part of the show. Anytime we get to like read out something someone's written in, like you said it before, but Dennis and I often, we spend a lot of time talking about like cord cutting or the internet broadly or like FCC policy these days. Mm-hmm. And like just to know we're not yelling out in the rain is kind of nice. So when someone writes in, especially this one, which was like very long and heartfelt, it was really, really nice.
Yeah. So Wes wrote us an email and let me pull it up here. Okay. So Wes wrote in and he said, I just wanted to say thanks to you and Joel for helping me in several ways. I found the website and subsequently the podcast just doing a Google search for cable alternatives. My wife and I were paying $220 a month for cable TV and 25 megabits per second internet through AT&T, and we only had one receiver, so one box. We had AT&T for a few years, and every 12 months, I had to call up and renegotiate our price. But after the last deal quotes ran out and the bill shot up to $220, I was tired of it. We've been trying to make some cuts to our budget, and that was obviously the first thing I knew we could live without. The only problem is we actually do watch a lot of TV, so I didn't want to lose any shows if I could help it. That's when I found your site. Pretty quickly, I felt confident we could switch to a streaming service for cheaper without sacrificing too much. Not only that, but after listening to some of your cord-cutting centric podcast episodes, I realized that we were getting raked over the coals at $65 a month for a measly 25 megabits per second. We switched to Suddenlink, the only other ISP in our area, and now we're getting 200 megabits per second for the same price.
Which is a monster.
That's a big boost.
Sorry, that's my edit to that email. Continue.
So we'll see how it goes, but it's been fine thus far. It took a few months because my wife has less patience for tinkering with things than I do. Wes, I hear you, man. That's my edit. But I made some lists and asked some friends and did some comparison shopping and cut the cord. We settled on PlayStation View since we already had a PS4. And all of the streaming services, and all of our streaming services and 90% of what we watch is on AMC and FX networks. Sounds like me, actually. Both of which included in their cheapest tier with our local affiliates. Plus, we already have Netflix and Amazon Prime, though we rarely use the streaming portion. I think the only additional service we might add is Hulu, but we don't really need it. All told, our internet and TV costs went from $220 a month to about $95 a month. Even if I add Hulu and throw in Star subscription for a few months, for American Gods, also a good show,
right.
It's still only around $115. We've lost nothing and gained about $120 a month and 8 times the internet speed. Secondly, I want to thank you guys for discussing the topics on the of the FCC, FTC, and net neutrality. I know you've recently mentioned that people are tired of hearing about it, but I really enjoy getting weekly updates on what's happening in the government in regards to the internet. I don't really follow anyone else that focuses on this topic, but internet is such an integral part of our lives that it seems silly to ignore it. I know there are a lot of other problems to focus on, but it's no reason not to stay informed. To be honest, I only cherry pick a few episodes of the podcast about cord cutting initially, but the more I listened, the more I enjoyed the way you and Joel explained everything you talk about. Okay, this next part's in parentheses. I also really enjoy hearing the frustration in Joel's voice when he starts talking about the FCC. So,
look,
you got a fan out there.
Wes, I try to mask it. I just fail.
It's hard.
It really is. They're very frustrating these days.
It's super frustrating. Okay, so back to Wes. You really helped me understand a lot of things I never even realized I wanted to know about. And even though it's usually depressing as hell, every week I look forward to you guys explaining what's been going on in Washington, what the government's claims are, and what it potentially means for the general population. In a related note, you've also impressed upon me the importance of a good VPN, so thanks for that. Anyway, I say keep talking about the FCC, ISPs, and net neutrality issues. It's important. It's ever-changing, and it's more complicated than I think a lot of people realize. Besides, how many episodes can you really do on cord cutting anyway? Things in that realm change much slower than our current administration's policies, so just know that I definitely appreciate it, though I'm sure my wife wishes you would stop so I don't come home every week ranting and raving about why Chairman Pai has what he has done now.
If it makes you feel better, so does my wife.
Oh, my wife is so tired about hearing Chairman Pai.
Yeah.
Yeah. One last thing I thought you might get a kick out of. Our new internet got set up late on Monday, so I called to cancel AT&T that Tuesday just to make sure there were no interruptions for service. When the customer service person picked up and asked how he could help, I told him I need to cancel my service. Without missing a beat, he said, "Okay, I understand you're looking to make your monthly bill more manageable." I was so surprised at his response that without even thinking, I replied, "Yes, that's correct. I'd like to manage my bill down to $0 a month." He did not have a scripted response for that. Wes.
Wes. Oh,
Excellent email.
I love it. I have so many comments. One on the script with the call center there. Not only do I enjoy, and I feel a little bad for liking this one, but I enjoy that you stumped the call center worker for AT&T.
Well, because those people,
it's not their fault, right? Like, so I get that.
It's a tough job,
but it's probably kind of an amusing story when they get off and they go to break and they're like, "Dude, I had no idea what to say." But I also really like that now some poor bastard has to figure out how to write a response to that in its script.
Yeah, because that's what happens. So actually, like, one of my first jobs in IT was in tech support.
Yeah.
It was for Apple, but I was with a subsidiary, so it wasn't technically with Apple. But that would happen. Like,
of course,
if there was not an article to address what someone was talking about when they called in,
and you thought you would get more of those types of calls,
it would be written right away. So yes, so like right now there is a Wes article.
Guaranteed, there is some Joel Reeves clone out there somewhere writing that article, Wes.
Right.
Just so you know.
Yeah.
Number two, do you mind if I just run through my comments on?
No, go shoot.
I mean, like, one, the call center thing. Two, I agree with you about what is it for American Gods? What's the station?
Station. Oh, that's Stars, right? Yeah.
Stars. I agree with you about that, but I'm reading the book now so that I can like read the book and then watch the show. So like I'm like chomping at the bit to like go add that. Right, like, but I haven't done it yet. I'm very excited.
What about Walking Dead, man? I'm sorry, not Walking Dead. Evil Dead. Ash vs. Evil Dead.
Oh, well, so love that show. Finished season 2. We let things lapse. We're going to pick it back up when the show starts back up.
Yeah, and let me warn people out there: if you decide to watch Ash vs. Evil Dead because I said so on this show, you're going to be in for a shock if you're not into ridiculous horror gore.
If you didn't like, this is an easy test.
Trigger word.
If you did, exactly. Trigger word. If you didn't like, growing up, Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness, or Briscoe County Jr.,
right,
you're probably not going to like that show.
And even if you,
I love that
even
show.
If you like the Evil Dead series, like, this is like if you took like the blood and gore of Kill Bill, and threw it into the Evil Dead.
Yeah, but it's cartoonish, so I don't think it's actually.
Well, I just want to warn people because I don't want some grandma out there coming home from Sunday Mass who listens to our podcast going and pulling stars up and watching Ash vs. Evil Dead.
True enough. So that's my second comment to Wes. I am equally excited about American Gods, but I haven't gotten there yet. And then, like, my third thing is just generally, I really, really appreciate this email. Thank you for writing in. And I'll try to keep my frustration, like,
people love it, though.
Are we sure they love it?
Well, that's what we need. You need some emotion in there, man. It's an emotional subject.
I spent, in my defense, how many episodes not cursing?
Oh, I know.
I haven't thrown a single thing on Mike.
We've thrown, because
on Mike.
We've eliminated that rule because it was just too much editing. Thanks. Like, Wes, really,
thank you,
really
Wes.
does.
Thanks. That was really nice.
It makes it worth doing. I mean, really, it's just like the.
So we've got a handful of you out there. I know the Christopher's out there, and Wes, and there's some others we've mentioned before. So keep it up. Anybody writes in, if we can, we'll name drop you and read your stuff out because we really appreciate it.
If it's to the caliber of a Wes or the Christopher email,
can they all really be at that caliber?
That's the level we've set.
That's a high bar.
It is a high bar. So,
all right. You're the boss.
So let's get to some cord cutting. So, I mean, the big reason people do it is money. And, I'm going to get to, like, really, in my mind, there are 3 reasons to kind of cut the cord. But let's, we'll start with money. And it's hard to get solid numbers on an actual non-promo priced, like, cable package.
Yeah, and I will say, is interesting as Wes's story was, and as great as it was to get his email, someone who gets that kind of bump from another provider in terms of speed seems to be unusual. Like that was...
I would say it used to be. Recently, though,
You seeing more of that?
Well, I'm seeing a little bit more as... Well, what I'm seeing is as cord cutting's happening and more people are going to over the top, companies that aren't Comcast and Charter are starting to treat their internet as kind of like
a utility.
Well, they're as a gateway. So because they're like, well, I might not be able to compete with Comcast or Charter when it comes to their cable or pay TV service.
Sure.
I definitely can do a better job at internet.
All right.
So I will.
Well, they don't own the content, provide the lines.
Right. So let somebody like I'll give them an internet line.
Well, it's encouraging that you're seeing more of that.
Yeah. So I mean, at least where there is some competition. Yeah. I'm sure if you're in an environment where you only have one provider, that's probably not happening.
Yeah. So major metropolitan areas, you might see more.
Right. So I did find some numbers though. In 2015, SNL Kagan, which is kind of like a research group for the industry, pegged the average double play package, which is internet and cable TV, at $132 a month. Also, if you take into effect that the inflation of pay TV is about 5% a year, so that would put, like, right now, a double play package at about 145.
I was going to say 150. My math's a little off.
So, I mean, and that's, just internet, television. And the reason for that is you see those promo prices, they seem so good. But really where they get you is all the equipment fees.
Yeah, the box.
That's where it is.
I don't remember the number, but we do have a back catalog episode specifically
Episode
on...
14.
Oh, look at you.
There you go.
Smarty pants. on cable boxes and how they get you.
Yep. That's right. And that's it really deals, because that's if you really look at it, that's their business.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Because they're not making a lot of money off the subscription per se, because I know ESPN, I mean, it's been a while since I checked, but they were like north of $6 or $7 last I looked.
Yeah.
And that's per person. So for every person that has ESPN, the company is paying ESPN $7.
So,
and all the regional sports stuff is like that. Like all the sports stuff is expensive like that. So while it's all said and done, I know someone did some research a while back that said it was like $30 for sports alone. Right. So once you $30. So once you factor in, all those other channels, you're probably, the margins are probably a little less than you would think. Right, yeah. Well, and they're making money on the boxes.
But think about it this way, right? Like, and this is exactly what you're getting at is, let's say, right? Like the margins are like grocery stores, which are notoriously tight. So 2%, right? On like general services, like the actual service itself, forgetting the hardware, right? Like providing the hardware is a nominal cost to them.
Right.
So 90% of that's probably going to be like profit. And you take that and you go, okay, each box is $10, right?
Right.
And then
$20 if you want the multi-room DVR.
Yeah. So you assume, an average household has 1.5 boxes. You're at $15.
It's actually higher than that. It's like,
is it?
Yeah, it's like 2.5. Yeah, it's like 2.5.
2.5?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm sorry. My heart skipped. But right there, that's $25, right? And you go, of that, let's say, and I'm just making this up, but I'm guessing, right? At 80, 70%, you're at $20 profit on top of the, roughly $100 of straight just eating the costs, right? That's where you make your margin, right? All of a sudden you're at a 15%, 12% margin on a business that would otherwise be a 2 to 3% margin.
Right. And it didn't used to be that way. And it's kind of like they're almost stuck in quicksand.
Yeah.
Because the content providers, like your ESPNs and whoever, have like they've set their price. And it's almost getting to the point where, I mean, have you noticed how like Dish Network and DirecTV are always having these battles where you'll see the little scroll on the screen where they'll say, well, we're having negotiations with this network and they might not be on, and there's all these battles. And it's because it's becoming untenable. It's getting to the point where it's not profitable for them anymore to carry these channels, so they're just dropping them.
Yeah.
Or like ESPN, who like 2 years ago was dead set against having their own streaming service.
Yep.
They just recently announced that that's what they're looking to do now. They're looking to put a direct to customer streaming service.
Well, it's because for a decade and a half, everyone has been subsidizing that.
Right. And they don't need those cable. They don't need the middleman anymore.
No.
Because they can go right to the customer.
Yep.
And make a little bit more money than if they, pitched it to Comcast or Charter or whoever. But, if you want a dedicated sports channel, I'm sure that if you're a sports fan out there, you'd gladly pay $8, $9. So when it comes to, money is pretty much the number one reason people do this.
It's pretty obvious.
They're realizing, there's less value when it comes to cable TV. And Nielsen actually put out a report saying that like 80% of the shows that people watch, they're on network.
Yeah.
So that's free if you can get an antenna up and running. And another thing people are starting to recognize is there's just better content on Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, and, some premium channels. So, that's pretty much the number one reason. I guess value. It comes down to like people are just not seeing value in it anymore. The second reason, commercials. A lot of streaming is involved when you cut the cord, and a lot of streaming services have kind of a way to avoid commercials, whether they don't have them at all and you just pay like a flat fee. Some offer an option, you pay a couple bucks extra, you eliminate the commercials. So if you factor in, you watch, 2 hours of TV a night, it's about 30 minutes of commercials. That totals 182 hours a year in commercials. So if you account for the 8 hours of sleeping per day, you're talking about 11 and a half days of straight up watching commercials.
Yeah.
A year.
A monster.
That's a weekend.
Monster
It's a
number.
week and a half of just watching commercials. And then there's all those indirect costs of like, what are you buying because you saw those commercials?
Well, and or at least I think the more obvious is like the opportunity cost. That's what sorry, jargony. Hopefully everyone knows it, but probably not. Economics term of basically saying like, hey, you're doing this thing, you're watching commercials, so that means you can't do this other thing. Right? So if you were watching your show, whatever it was, let's say, I don't know, pick a show. Oh, here, I'll give you one. USA Network show that's now off the air, Burn Notice.
Okay.
Right? So you're watching Burn Notice. If you're watching on USA in reruns, right, and you're watching through paid television, you're seeing commercials, right? And so you're losing, I think it's roughly 18 minutes to the hour, right, for commercials. And so that time, right, is now 18 minutes you can't spend doing whatever else. Right.
And in today's economy, like, I mean, millennials are probably a little more in tune to this, but people who make their money off the internet, like, they have like, I don't know, a website they do, or they do some type of marketing gig. time is literally money to people who are working from home.
And time has always been a proxy for, or money has always been a proxy for time.
It is, but I think now, like,
it's just more obvious.
It is. It's more quantifiable, and there's just a lot of people out there who are just like there's no longer a division between work and home life for some out there. So really,
like I work from home a lot. So if I'm spending in the evening, if I'm watching television, like a show I've been watching recently is Salem on Netflix. Good show. I have no idea when it originally ran because I watch it on Netflix. So it could be, a year or two old and be out of service entirely.
But it doesn't matter.
But it doesn't matter. I don't care, right? And I just watch it straight through, and it's done after 42 minutes or whatever it is, and I'm done. I watch just it. I don't watch Tide commercials and so on, right? Like, because I'm paying Netflix its money directly rather than Netflix getting its money from Tide, or not Tide, but what's that? General Mills, I think, who makes Tide.
Let's just call it Tide.
Tide. Anyways, bad example. But you get the point that, like, hey, there's no middleman there that is betting on my eyeballs, like, then go and buying the product. I'm paying Netflix directly, so I watch that show. I get more of my time back.
Right.
And I can watch another, portion of a Salem episode, or I could just go, God forbid, play with my children or talk to my wife of 12 years and act like I care about more time stuff
in your day to play with your children and talk to your
wife.
Were
a lot of air quotes when I was saying
it was like he almost took off. There were so many air quotes.
There's so many air quotes.
So the third reason that I would go why I think cord cutting is pretty freaking awesome is the no contracts.
Yeah.
The flexibility is nice.
It's neat.
Like, right? You're not penciled into a 1-year deal, 2-year deal. You switch month to month. You can pick up what you want. All those services usually come with a free trial. You can try things out before you decide to commit.
Well, and honestly, there's a fair amount of overlap between a lot of these services. So you can kind of, you don't even have to do it. They are kind of bidding each other off each other already. Yep. Right? Like there's so much overlap in general television that let's just take two examples. Amazon Prime and Netflix, right? They're so similar in their back catalog movie offerings.
Yeah.
That there's almost no distinguishing between them, right? Like Netflix has many advantages in its original content and Amazon has its, right?
Mm-hmm.
But because of that, right, like they are constantly competing with each other. Amazon's kind of a goofy example. I probably shouldn't use it because it's got, I don't know, the rest of its entire business.
Oh yeah, I would have Amazon even if their
it.
Streaming sucked.
Yeah,
because
in fact,
right.
I
the
got
free shipping
Prime
and all
that
stuff is just worth it alone.
But you get the point that, like, Hulu and Netflix is probably a better one where you go, hey, there's some overlap between those, and because of that, like they're competing with each other enough to drive that price down to where I get a pretty good bargain.
Right. And when it comes down to it, the free and plans, if you sit back and you try to plan all this out, it's really just delaying your savings. Because the environment for cord cutting, since they're offering you free trials anyway, it's better just to kind of dive on in and try stuff out. And if you don't like it, you just switch to something else and you just find your way as you go.
Yeah, and the other thing about like just general contract flexibility, and this is any contract, but we'll keep it specific to this, is you don't know what next month is going to be.
Mhm.
right? Like you certainly don't know what 6 months from now is going to be. So the ability to nullify a contract, like to step away from that without penalty, is actually quite valuable.
Yeah, it's worth a lot.
Yeah. Because like I can tell you, great example, University of Maryland. Wonderful, wonderful school here in the great state of Maryland, right? Had a buddy who was actually from Jersey. He was out of state, getting his degree here. When he eventually left, and decided to go back to New Jersey, so he withdrew from the school. Yeah, University of Maryland charged him $50 to withdraw. Like, for God's sake, right? Like, and that's kind of standard practice when a company has you in like a contract, right? Like a
you're gonna have to pay a fee to get out of it.
in
Right.
fixed amount of time contract. And so a month-to-month subscription has a lot of advantages.
So, I mean, when it comes down to, the benefits, it really comes down to like money and time and flexibility.
Yeah.
That's the benefits of cutting the cord.
And those are kind of big deals.
Right. And it's huge. So how do you, so I know you guys are probably like, all right, how do you do it? Like, what do you look for? And one is internet. And that's usually kind of like a sticky subject for people because you're probably going to have to buy the internet from the same person who is selling you the TV.
Yeah, you're going to buy it for someone you don't like.
Some situations you might have another option, but
so more or less, like here, it would be Verizon, right? Like
for us.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. For here,
us, we got Comcast,
where we are
we
here,
Verizon.
But I mean, like most of us are Verizon customers for like our phones and stuff because we're on the East Coast in the Mid-Atlantic. And so, like, that's what it would be. And, basically what you're talking about is, scaling back your services you're getting from them and keeping the ISP portion of their services.
Now, a few years, when I cut the cord, internet was pretty pricey, like on a standalone, because they weren't really giving anybody benefits. I remember the first year we did it, I think it was 2013. So like 4 years ago, and I think I was paying $65.
Yeah, when we first started talking about it was about 2 years ago, and I think I remember you saying it was still a little pricey compared to what it is now.
Yeah, now like in our area, Verizon is giving 50 megabits per second for like $39.99,
which is pretty awesome.
Right. And if you really want to go hog wild, they're giving close to a gig. It's like 980 megabits per second for like $69.
So that's a lot of speed.
It is. And that's happening anywhere where where there's more than one provider. There's a bit of a bidding war going on right now.
Sure.
Now, unfortunately, people that don't have that option, I don't know what it's like. But what I did do is I put together a page on the site. And if you find some cheap internet out there, put it in the comments. I will throw it on the page. But it's basically anyone who's told me or any internet I know of to where it's an affordable cord cutting solution, I've put on this page. I'll put it in the show notes. It's on groundedreason.com. And you'll be able to check it out. So really, when it comes to cutting the cord, I'd say $65 to $70 is probably your absolute max. But I'm telling you, a lot of people out there, you can probably get it for you can get a decent connection for $50. Now, when it comes to the speed you actually need, if it's just you and you're only going to be running one stream, you can really get by 5 to 10 MIPS.
Yeah. We've talked about that before, and like that seems to be the opinion of everything everything you've experienced and I've read about the topic is roundabout that.
My in-laws are actually watching streaming on a 3 megabit per second DSL line. Now, their video is in like standard def.
Right.
But they're still doing it.
They're still watching it.
So it's possible. It's just every additional stream, like if you have multiple televisions, just double it, because it for an HD stream you're talking about 5 to 7 megabits per second. So for every one that you want to run at the same time, make sure you have the bandwidth for that.
Seems like you kind of want to call it about 10 per, and then just
right, because if you have someone who wants to use the internet or what have you, while
just multiply by the number of connections you expect at any given time.
Exactly. And I'll link that'll be in the show notes. Anything we talk about where a link's involved, just check the show notes and you'll be able to check that out. So once you have your internet, as I said earlier, Nielsen said 80% of watching and viewership is with network television. Yep. So the best way to do that is with an antenna.
And I will just refer to the back catalog. We have an episode
11.
God, you are on the ball.
I did,
Johnny on the spot.
You know who did this to me? The Christopher. Christopher wrote an email saying, hey, when you mention episodes, if you're going to talk about something in a show, you should mention the episode number, because I have to go back and look for it all the time. So I was like, you know what, The Christopher, I will do that just for you. So when I looked and I read what we're going to talk about today, I went and looked and just wrote all the episode numbers down.
I'm promoting him to Mr. Christopher right now. Mr. Christopher, if you're out there, I just want to say thank you for keeping us honest on that, because I have legitimately no idea.
Well, because we do it a lot. We do it a lot where we mention, like, there was this episode a while back. You talked about
somewhere back there, and whatever. But for anyone who's interested on the antenna stuff, there's a great site. What's the site's name? TVFull.com,
yes.
And it's kind of it's amazing. They do great work.
Well, they tell you, it basically gives you a full signal readout of what's available.
Of like in your area.
The power of the signal, like to your house.
It's awesome.
Right.
But it's kind of complicated. I'll say it this way. It's not really complicated, but it's not intuitive. Right. Like, so once you understand it, it makes plenty of sense.
Right. If you listen to that episode, it'll explain all.
Oh, and I'll tell you why. Because I'm dumb as a box of rocks.
That's not true.
And I asked every question I could in that episode to be like, and then what do I click? And so it actually does a pretty decent job of laying out, like, hey, here's how you go about using this tool to figure out what type of antenna you want.
Yeah, because a lot of it is, and I mean, actually, I said this recently on the list when I was on that show, because they asked me about antennas, and I said, well, all antennas really aren't created. It's not that they aren't created equal, it's that every situation is different.
Yeah, a little bit different purpose, different geography, frankly.
Right. And there's also different bands out there, like VHF and UHF, and some antennas are better at picking up one band and not the other. There's also where your tower is positioned. Some antennas are good at focusing their energy in a single direction. So if all your towers are in one direction, you might want to go with that antenna. And I lay all that out in an article on, which antenna is the best for you in your given situation. And I'll link that in the show notes, and it'll let you know exactly what to get if you read through it. So a lot of people will kind of just run to the store and they'll see an antenna and they buy it. I don't really recommend doing that.
Yeah. I would say take an hour.
Do the research.
Yeah, check it out. I mean, honestly, because once I understood the site, it didn't take that long to figure it out.
And you're getting television for free.
Yeah, and
it used to be that way.
Free.
That used to be the way of the world.
Well, I mean, again, this is we get into this and other stuff where we talk about, like, there's two business models, right? One is you're paying for it directly, and the other one's you're paying with your eyeballs.
Right.
And all this is you're paying with your eyeballs.
But
right?
You know what? To be fair, if you're buying network television from a cable company, you're paying twice.
Touche. But all I'm saying is that when someone goes and listens to our episode about Cody, and we start talking about, like, torrents and all of that are built into apps that are put up there in using pirated content, we lay out that like there's really only two legitimate ways you're gonna see television. One is you're seeing commercials,
Right.
and the other is you're paying for it directly.
Exactly. So free is best. So get an antenna if you can is really, kind of the lesson here. Now, if you can't get an antenna, later on I will, kind of explain other ways to get some of those local channels through some streaming services. But before we get there, I want to go into how to watch, because I would say most people out there who aren't like complete couch potatoes, who are like if you're not like,
don't judge me.
Sorry, Joel. But if you enjoy TV, but it's not, it's just not like, because I mean, I grew up in a house where, after 6:00, that's what my dad and mom did. It's like kind of turn the TV on.
Me too.
That was the end of the day. But if you are more of you have a few cable shows you watch and some network shows you watch, I would say the average person would be kind of hard pressed to name 5 to 6 cable shows they watch a season.
Yeah. That's probably a pretty safe bet.
So if you're in that boat where you're like kind of like a casual cable TV show watcher and your number's about 5 or 6, did you know you could just buy those off Amazon?
Yeah.
Or iTunes. They'll give you the whole season, current season, for like $25.
In the number of seasons, right? Like, because a lot of people, I think, worry, at least some that I've talked to, worry about like, well, can I get the particular show that I'm interested in? And the answer is almost always yes.
Yeah, I mean, I watch
their catalogs are huge.
I watch Walking Dead that way, and Walking Dead is like probably the biggest show out there on cable, on AMC. Yeah, pretty sure it still is. Like, I know they were hitting like 10 to 13 million viewers per show, so that's how I watch Walking Dead. It costs me $25, and I get the whole entire season, and I can watch the show one day after it airs. So I have to wait a day. I got to avoid spoilers. I don't get on Twitter, the Monday.
Yep.
And I'll just, come home and I'll watch Walking Dead.
God forbid we all avoid Twitter for a day.
Right. So if you do the math, if you have like 5 shows, that comes out to about $120, which is about $10 a month. Yeah. So, you factor that in. You got internet for about, let's just say $55 after, factoring in any possible fees that you may incur. Your network TV is through your antenna, so you might be watching ads, but aside from that, it's free. You get your 5 shows. And your bill, you factor that in, so it's like really $55 plus the $10 a month for the shows. You're talking about $65 a month. $65 a month, where the average cost was, what would you say it was?
$145 a month.
Yeah, so I mean that's a huge savings right there. Now, granted, that is the economy cut the cord version.
Yeah, but I mean,
but it's doable, and that's what I get.
Well, and it's a fair amount of stuff.
Oh yeah,
right?
I mean, and because a lot of people will like, well, what about like a back catalog, like Netflix and Hulu or Amazon Prime?
And
I would
got
say
Amazon Prime, and
most people
Amazon
have it.
Yeah, well, that's another thing. Is a lot of people have it, don't realize what they get with it.
That's right.
Like, I'll give you another one. If you have Amazon Prime, so a fair number of people realize that Amazon Prime gives them television and movies. Most don't realize it gives them audiobooks as well.
Yep.
Like, so
and
there's
music.
There's quite a lot of stuff with Amazon Prime that you get that you don't realize you have.
It's really like I would say that the movie catalog is kind of almost free when you consider the
it
other
really
values.
is. Yeah, well, I mean, like the reason why we got Amazon Prime in my family was the shipping.
Yeah. I mean, because Christmas alone?
Yeah. I mean, like, really, quite literally, we have 3 December birthdays in my family. And you take those and Christmas and you go, well, that's more than enough shipping to justify Amazon Prime.
Right. So there's your economy version. Now, if you want to, because there are some people who are not familiar with streaming out there. And I know people who listen to this show most likely are, but if you're going to give this episode to someone, it's the first time you're listening to the show. If you want to watch one of these services on your
Yeah.
TV, you either need, like a lot of TVs you buy now are smart TVs to where it's already hooked to the internet. And some of them will actually have these apps on them already, like where you'll have like your Netflix, Hulu, Amazon apps already installed on the TV. If you don't have a smart TV, you can go and you can pick up a device that will allow you to, you basically hook up to the internet and watch these services on the device, like a Roku or an Amazon Fire TV or a Apple TV.
Mm-hmm.
Now, generally speaking, if you are not too techy, you want some user friendliness, I'd go with the Roku.
Yeah.
If
Great
you,
device.
I mean, that's just my opinion. If you're in the Apple ecosystem, obviously Apple TV.
I know a couple people who have Apple TVs. They really, really like
They're
it.
nice. I had a 3rd gen. I switched to the Roku.
They're a little pricey. That's the
They
only
are.
knock.
But I mean, I switched to the Roku more for the kids because, well, like the 3rd gen Apple TV was kind of just like like your standard Apple locked in walled garden ecosystem where you couldn't install any apps. And they wanted to watch a lot of like other kids programming. So
Sure.
Roku is much more flexible because it allows you to install a whole bunch of apps from the Roku store. Now that's changed because the 4th gen Apple TV has some apps you can install on it, but Roku is probably the best where it comes for if you combine flexibility of apps that you can install and usability, I would say Roku is where you want to go. Now, Amazon Fire TV, what it has going for it is it works really good with some streaming services we're going to talk about soon, namely PlayStation Vue. It's really good at interfaces for like your live TV streaming services, which we haven't covered yet, but we'll get to. And if you're a techie out there and you really want to get into things like Kodi, which we've talked about in,
We have at least 2 episodes.
a few episodes on Kodi. Sorry, I didn't write those down. The Christopher.
That's Mr. Christopher.
Mr. Christopher. Then the NVIDIA Shield is probably the best one because that's a tinkerer's paradise when it comes to streaming. Like you can pretty much do anything with an NVIDIA Shield. So that's really what it really comes down to. Pick what streaming services you want and then decide your device if you can.
Yeah, I mean, like, even to back it up one step from that, it's almost, this is what you told me when we first started talking about this, is pick what shows you like.
Yeah. Pick the shows you like.
And then figure out the streaming services that provide those shows. And then go from there.
Right. And do it generally. Don't sit there and like, don't pull like a, it's not a risk board. Like, don't stand back and like plan your war. Like, just kind of just pick some shows you like, dive on in and see where it goes. Any device you buy, you're pretty much gonna be happy with. I mean, a lot of them, I mean, they all cover the major streaming services and, they all get the job done. It's really kind of a commodity market at this point.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about an easy way to get some cable stuff. We talked about, how to get some network. Talked about back catalog a bit because you can do that through Netflix and Amazon Prime. Premium channels, you can pretty much just when I cut the cord, like I was hurting because there was nothing. Like
but
originally.
Through Amazon you can get all the premium.
But it was all
channels.
back cataloged at the point. When I cut the cord, there was no
I guess it's true.
Yeah, like originally, like HBO was not. Now HBO was the first one to jump in and just kind of offer direct to anyone. Now all of them do. Now you can get Showtime on a subscription by itself. You can get Showtime through Hulu. You can get it through Amazon. Same with HBO with the exception of Hulu. Stars you can get through Amazon. Stars gives you a standalone service. The best part about all of this is there's no contract month to month. You can juggle it. So if you're a Game of Thrones fan, you can pick up HBO during the Game of Thrones season.
5 months they run,
and you can watch it and drop it. You can also binge watch all the other stuff on the HBO back catalog while Game of Thrones is going on. So it allows you to kind of like manage, your services and get the most for your money. Another great, you can't really, while you could do with that with cable, it's a pain in the ass to wait on hold for,
it is.
Like if you wanted to drop HBO, you got to call up, wait on hold, whatever else. This will allow you to do it online. You just go in, I want HBO, watch, whatever you want.
Yeah, you just drop.
A few months later, you go back on, just hit the button, canceled. So it's much more convenient. So for those out there that want the live experience, like, because I know there are folks that, because it's an adjustment. It's like when you move to cord cutting, it's more of a kind of like an active viewing experience where you have to decide what you want to watch. You have to go out and put it on.
Yep.
Where it's not just like with cable, you can kind of just flop on the couch and push some buttons and just watch what you want.
Really one, right? Like you're normally just turning it on.
Right. So you can still, as a cord cutter, you can still do that because, and originally it was just Sling TV was kind of like the service that delivered this, where you get like live TV channels kind of over the air. They were the first one to do it, where it'll give you cable channels over the internet.
Yep.
And you can go and you can check out these services. I'm just kind of rattle them off here because they all kind of give you a little bit.
They're comparable.
They're comparable. Some, I mean, all of them have a cloud-based DVR with the exception of one, which is DirecTV Now. And I'll get to that. But they, it's really kind of like a pricing pick and choose kind of issue, kind of thing here. And you got Sling TV, which they have a cloud DVR, so you'll be able to like DVR what you want. They offer, I would say, out of all of them, they give you the most kind of like a la carte options.
Yeah.
Where you just kind of like, because entry level is $20. Their cheapest subscription level is $20, and it gives you, a load of channels, including like ESPN and a bunch of Disney channels. For $25, it kind of adds in it removes some channels but adds some other stations.
Have they changed anything since the blue and orange and all that?
No, it's still
stuff?
blue and orange, which is pretty much, it's really Disney kind of versus Fox when you really look at it. It's like your orange package is like a bunch of Disney channels plus a bunch of standard basic channels.
So we have a back episode that goes in greater detail.
Yeah, episode 3, I think.
That sounds right.
Yeah, early on. It's like watching cable over the internet, kind of. It covers that. I think it covers Sling and the next one, which is PlayStation View. So, I mean, all of these are kind of in depth. There's like, and what I'll do here. This is what I'll do. And then in the show notes, I will put a blog post for each of these services to kind of give you guys an idea, because they all, I mean, it's all like picture getting cable television, but it's just over the internet to where you don't need a cable box. It's just, you can watch it on your smart TV or your Roku or, your Apple TV or what have you. But it's Sling TV, which is probably your most a la carte, which gives you a lot of pick and choose options. Then there's DirecTV Now, which, is by the makers of DirecTV. And they have, their entry-level system's affordable. Gets kind of crazy after that.
Right.
But I think it's like $35 for their entry system. And it gives you a lot of good cable TV channels, including like your majors, your TBS, your AMCs, what you would get with a standard basic. View, PlayStation View is another good service out there. Now, the one thing is DirecTV Now, which I just mentioned, does not have a cloud DVR. Yet they say they're looking into one.
Yeah.
And when I say cloud DVR, it gives you basically, it's like DVR service like you would get from a cable box, except it's on their cloud.
Well, and the important aspect of it being on a cloud is, one, you don't have a device in your house.
Right.
Which is obnoxious and often has a fee associated with it. And then two,
and for a cloud, picture it as your own personal on demand where you say, I want to save that show, this show, and this show, and it'll just be there.
Well, and really, it means that for those that are used to a DVR, you don't really have to worry about culling your space very much.
Right. Because it'll do it for you. And that most of them have taken the approach where oldest one you've watched, they'll delete it.
Yep.
So I mean, it's a good way to manage. So you have that. You have Sling TV, DirecTV Now, PlayStation View. The newest one is actually the second. Let's do YouTube TV first. That one came out, and what they've done. And remember how I mentioned how if you don't have an antenna or you can't get an antenna, you can, there's other ways to watch your local TV. These streaming services will do that, but you need to look into them because it's based on where you live.
Right.
In most cases.
Certain markets, like I believe it was the first one we were talking about. What was it? Not PlayStation View.
Sling?
Yeah, Sling. Where we're talking about the orange and the blue and all of those different things. They also had a whole bunch of different markets.
Right. Well, it's basically you'll get live Fox and you get live NBC if you're in certain markets, and live ABC if you pay an extra $5 if you're in certain markets. And really, it comes down to what markets do they have a deal with.
Right.
And the same is true with PlayStation View and DirecTV Now. Now, that situation's getting a little better recently because basically, like NBC has they own the local channels in major markets. They own the local channels in like your Philadelphias and your LAs and your New Yorks. But there's a lot of smaller markets out there where it's an affiliate market that actually owns it. That isn't
sure.
So if they didn't sign on, you might not get the live service. But
yeah, so if you're in Cincinnati, you got to kind of look at your options.
Right. But it's getting better. NBC just made a deal with all their local affiliates to where if NBC negotiates a deal, like the parent company negotiates a deal, all the affiliates come along.
Which is nice.
Very nice. So that I think that's getting better. I think people are realizing that that's a big hassle and customers hate it because there's nothing worse than getting a service and then, realizing that you're not getting what you thought you paid for.
Yeah.
So Google, to fix that with YouTube TV, they're only releasing in markets where they have the local affiliate deals.
Which is really the way it should be done if you can do it.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming, doing it by IP address is how they figure it out?
Yeah, they're probably using geolocation.
Yeah, that's what I would think.
Right. So if you basically you're going to, and I'm going to link all of these in the show notes, go to the site and, you can see what's available in your area. Hulu TV is the newest one. If you're a Hulu fan out there, you use Hulu, don't worry. You can still get the original, like, on-demand Hulu streaming catalog. Now they're just offering another tier of live service.
Yeah.
It's about $39, which, it's pricey, but it's cheaper than cable.
That's true.
So you can go and you can purchase Hulu TV, and it's actually kind of like the Gucci version of it. It really simulates what cable would be because they actually have they have an unlimited streaming option to where you can stream it to as many TVs as you want for $14.99 extra a month. So if you're like, if you have 7 cable boxes, Hulu TV is really a good, proxy for that because you can just get the unlimited service for $14.99.
So if you had a large family,
right,
it would be a really good option.
You can watch it on as many TVs as you want. So, I mean, I really just wanted to kind of do like a high level of kind of those services here because we've covered them in the past. We'll probably, we recently, just 2 episodes ago, we covered, Hulu TV.
Yeah.
And, if we were going in depth on all of those, this would be kind of like a hardcore history, like a Dan Carlin
6 hour.
It would be a 6 hour
marathon
episode of the Grounded Reason podcast. And I don't know if anyone out there can listen to Joel and I for 6 hours.
Maybe you, but not me.
I don't know, man. I think Dan Carlin's the only guy that can pull that off.
That guy is a genius.
Yeah. If you haven't listened to Hardcore History out there, you should really check it out in iTunes podcast.
Great podcast.
Really awesome. But so basically what I'm saying is Joel and I are running out of gas. And we just wanted to give a high-level overview of cord cutting. And I'm to a point now where if we keep going, it's going to be like another hour of explaining each one of these services. So
word salad at this point.
So where's the music? Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
This is Dennis Rostaro.
And this is Joel Reeves.
And we'll see you next time.
Take care, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
But, there's no need to mock me.